But back like at as far as this chapter goes, like the big pieces I want to talk about is when he does name Cinder, we get a big piece of information because he goes Ferula. He goes, like refresh me again to our relationship. The Shadow Man said, a deep sliver of anger running through his patient tone. I am in your service. Cinder made a placating gesture. You are a tool in my hand, the Shadow Man interrupted gently. Nothing more. A hint of defiance touched his expression. He paused. I would. The soft voice went as hard as a rod of Ramson steel. For Rula. Reason that's important is when he goes to Adem and he talks to Cheyenne about the Chandrian, she mentions the different names, and the name she gave for Cinder is Ferule. Ferule. Cinder says Ferula. Ferula. So it's clear that Cheyenne might not be exactly right, but she is pretty fucking close to
I think you
knowing the
found
name of the Chandrian.
I think you found a typo in the book. You just spelled
Yeah,
it wrong.
yeah, that's it.
Good call, Tim. Good call, Tim.
But beyond the
Yeah.
typo, it shows that her names are probably pretty fucking accurate.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I
and
mean, we find that out in a lot of ways. That story that she tells, and it's all by word of mouth. She's not reading something. It's something
yeah,
they pass down, and we get that a lot. That they are very, very, very meticulous. Like with their sword, you know the story that goes all the way back, and you
yeah,
have to memorize it before you're walking out of this room. And and yeah, I mean, there's crystal clear accurate. Well, I would expect, and it does prove that there is a lot of crystal clear accuracy from that story, which we get late too, right? It's pretty late in book two that
yeah.
comes out, but we do get it. So
Yeah, and the other aspect of it to consider is did Kvothe hear Cinder's true name? And it seems like he did.
oh,
Does that show some ability to name? Like, it seems like, he goes into kind of a sleeping mind state after his parents get killed when he's in shock. And throughout the rest of the time, it seems like he's kind of like in, his sleeping mind is kind of taken over and is running the show. The fact that he hears Ferula, because when he hears Elxadal call the name of fire, he just hears fire.
Yeah.
So he didn't hear Cinder. He heard Ferula. He heard Cinder's true name. So that could either be just, Rothfuss wasn't thinking, which I don't.
That's
I don't
really
think is
interesting.
right. I think it's likely that it's an example of Kvothe having some major fucking power. That he was Haliax called Cinder's true name and Kvothe heard it. I think that's an example of his power.
That's
Kvothe's
really
power.
interesting. I hadn't considered the magnitude of what that means for Kvothe, and that really means a lot towards his goal. His eventual goal, which is to kill Cinder and all, as many of them as he can. He would be one that would be capable. That's really interesting, man. I hadn't actually considered that. Yeah, what that in effect means. In retrospect, I should have, but this is one of those things, man. That it's a small thing in the moment. It looms large, but in the moment when you're reading it, it's a name, right? And you just kind of you go through it. But yeah, once you make all those connections, and then you also consider that yes, he hears fire when Elxadal says fire. And there's other examples of that too, where you hear, what the word would be instead of what it actually is. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, as the reader, we hear iron when Chronicler
Yeah.
ties up Bast. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's a mistake on Rothfuss's part. I think that's a clue to how powerful Kvothe is, and I think it's a clue
Huh.
that
His sleeping
Kvothe is
mind
going
is,
to
right?
fuck up Cinder in book 3.
So that also speaks to the utility or the need to present this chapter, this particular situation the way that he did to awaken the sleeping mind or to put him in the mode of the sleeping mind. Right? Because I
Yeah,
mean, and he gives those little details in a number of ways. We didn't really point them out, but just they're there. And yeah, that's really interesting, man. Because yeah, there's a number of them that does show that that is what's happening. And yeah, that's really interesting, man. I hadn't considered that, but yeah, that makes yeah, that means a lot, man. That's
So you
very, very important.
not that not that he's behind one of the doors or behind the first door, but you're saying like he's in some kind of a state of like heart of stone kind of a state, or at least
no,
some
like
kind of a state, not behind a door.
his it's like his sleeping mind is kind of running the show. Like how Loden talks about like how your sleeping mind is kind of like the fucking animal instinct side of you, and it seems to be running the show. So when like Haley acts as like Ferula, it could be a sign that Kavoth's animalistic, instinctual side was kind of running the show. So he was actually able to hear his true name rather than to hear Cinder or just hear nothing. And it could show like this power that's inside this kid when he's in a traumatic experience. He's just in shock, and he's able to hear the true name of a truly historic figure in this world. Same as he was able to fucking call Florian's name when he's in the Fae.
Mhm.
Like almost immediately when he meets her, he's able to call her true name. Shows his fucking power. Go ahead, Tim.
So yeah, there's a couple of examples where he's leading into that sleeping mind. My body. This is kind of in the beginning when he's walking through and seeing the gore and bone and blood. My body grew numb. I felt as if I was trying to think through syrup. And then when he sees Cinder for the first time and noticed the goat's eyes and all that, he says, I felt a stab of feeling penetrate the confusion I clutched around me like a thick protective blanket. And something put both its hands deep into my chest and clutched. It may have been the first time in my life I ever was truly afraid. That also reminded me of Loden in terms of how he's able to look into him. But yeah, that speaks to his sleeping mind is running the show. I mean, and there's many other ways where he made it seem. We already talked about it. How it's as if he's in a daze. He's in shock. He's put in a state where he's just kind of moving through this. So
And
that would make
he's like
sense.
having like an outer body experience where he's reminding himself that he's in shock. Like, so there's one part
Yeah.
of his mind trying to tell his actual physical body that is going through the motions, hey, you're in shock, like shaking your
Yeah.
shoulder and like, hey,
So
you're in shock. But he's not like
yeah.
running the show. It's almost
Yeah.
like the co pilot is trying to tell you this.
Yeah, he literally says, some small rational part of me realized I was in deep shock. It repeated the fact to me again and again. I used all Ben's training to ignore it. I did not want to think about what I saw. I did not want to know what had happened here. I did not want to know what any of this meant.
So the fact that he's in that state and then he hears Cinder's true name, I think is significant. I think it shows his power, one, and I do think it shows that his sleeping mind had taken over, which I think will play a big role in when he goes into the woods and starts playing his music and he starts playing, when a leaf turns and that kind of stuff. I think it shows some magical aspect to that. I think his sleeping mind had fucking taken control of him and kept control for many years.
Yeah, that's interesting too. So if he's sitting in that, he's sitting in that sleeping mind state and then weaving these songs for all that time and making these emotions come to life and articulating all these experiences. that he's had up to that point in his life. No wonder when he plays that for people, it locks them up.
Yeah.
They just get locked, and they just like, it's so great when he writes that stuff. It's so good. It's really fun or cathartic to like sit in that as a reader. I've never read anything like that I can put my finger on personally. Yeah, it's really great. But I hadn't really considered that he's in that sleeping mind state for that long of a period, in which case he exercises through it. So no wonder when he meets a load and he's got power. Now we can always talk about Ilian and that bloodline and everything, but to be able to practice within it, he doesn't fully understand it. And that's also what's so great about how Rothfuss decides to present this. When he's with the Adem, he's humbled to the effect of like, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they're just like, and then he tries to actually explain it. And they're like, so what is this? Wait, what is it? He tips his mind into something.
Spinning leaf.
So yeah, it is spinning leaf. Yeah. Where I just stop thinking. They're like, that's it. That's what you're doing. You're doing what you should be doing. And you're doing much better than what people that train for years do. So yeah, keep doing that. You're cheating that you're doing. Keep cheating.
Yeah.
Like it's great, man. I think this is the muscle memory that he utilizes then that he's developing at this point. That's cool. I hadn't made the connection as deep as that. I like that. That's cool.